Hello. In the north of the American state of Texas, in Denton County, there is a small town called Copper Canyon. Connecting it and the city of Denton is a small bridge, only 32 meters long. When you first see the bridge, you'll find it's just an ordinary wooden bridge that has been weathered by time, nothing more. But the truth is, this simple bridge is surrounded by a large collection of stories and legends. Terrifying screams, the sound of footsteps with no one there, people being scratched and hit while crossing by hidden, non-existent entities. These things were the reason this bridge was placed on the list of the top 5 most haunted places in all of America. It has become one of the favorite spots for lovers of terrifying adventures, most of whom agree that the reason behind the frightening things that happen in this place is the Goatman. Welcome, and today I'm going to tell you about the demonic Goatman's Bridge. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell to be notified of our new story every week. The events of our story begin in the year 1846. At that time, Denton County, USA had just been newly established, and officials were looking for a headquarters to house the county's government institutions. It was agreed at that time that the headquarters would be in a small town called Pinckneyville. But not 2 years passed before they had to move the headquarters to a new location due to a water shortage. The Texas legislature at that time determined that the new headquarters would be in a city located on a high ridge, just 1 kilometer away from the old headquarters. The new place was named the town of Alton, but because it wasn't far from the previous town, the water problem was still not solved, and only one person agreed to move and live there. When the government saw the situation, they were forced to move the headquarters for the 3rd time in 1850. This time, to a city located south of Denton, which they also named Alton. There, the government built a post office, opened 2 hotels, a school, and a church. Little by little, residents began to be attracted to the place, and for 6 years, the situation remained completely stable. But then, residents began to complain that they were getting sick from the polluted water in the town. At that point, they submitted a petition to move the headquarters a little to the north. After that, the residents began to move one after another until the town of Alton was completely abandoned. About 30 years after these events, in 1884, a company called the King Iron Bridge Manufacturing Company came and decided to build a bridge of wood and steel to connect the city of Denton with another town called Copper Canyon. They named the bridge the Alton Bridge, after the old government headquarters. Because this bridge was the only one that connected the town of Copper Canyon with a well-known cattle trail in a forest in Denton, carts and horses were always coming and going on it, transporting goods, until the bridge became one of the most vital places in the entire region. But gradually, people stopped using it and went to another, more modern bridge that had been built. It was wider and allowed them to move in both directions, unlike the small wooden bridge that hindered their movement because it was one way, and little by little, the Alton Bridge and the entire surrounding area turned into a place completely deserted by humans. In the final period when the bridge was used only as a pedestrian crossing, many complained that unnatural things were happening on it. Strange sounds coming from the middle of the forest, unnatural movements in the river water under the bridge, and giant shadows appearing among the trees and suddenly disappearing. What's stranger is that these sightings were not from just 1 or 2 people. Thousands of people experienced this, and the strangest thing was the testimonies that said they saw a huge creature standing waiting for them at the other end of the bridge. Its body was that of a human but completely covered in thick black hair. It had the head of a goat with giant horns and would roar with a terrifying sound. As soon as it saw someone walking on the bridge, it would immediately charge at them. But just as it got close, it would suddenly disappear. Because these terrifying sightings happened to so many people, the bridge became known among the people as Goatman's Bridge. The legend of the Goatman, or the creature known in folklore by its name, the Faun, is a widespread legend in the West. It tells of a giant creature, 2.5 meters tall, whose body is half human and half goat, completely covered in hair and fur. It sometimes walks on 2 legs and sometimes on all 4, leaving behind a foul smell wherever it moves. In the legends, The fawn is a fierce, savage, and carnivorous creature that always lives in areas isolated from humans and on abandoned roads. And take note of that abandoned roads part, because that's what made many people think that this fawn was the strange thing at the Alton Bridge. And so? But the truth is, popular legends tell a completely different story about the Alton Bridge. A story that has no relation at all to the creature, the fawn. The legend tells that during this period, there was an African-American shepherd named Oscar Washburn. Oscar lived with his family in a small house located directly north of the bridge. In a short period, Oscar managed to achieve great success in his field, to the point that he became the most famous goat trader in the entire region. This fame led him one day to hang a sign on the bridge that read, "This way to the Goatman," referring to himself, as he was a goat trader, and at the same time implying another metaphorical meaning, which is GOAT, an acronym for greatest of all time, as a form of pride. It says, in America, there is an organization called the KKK, which is a racist extremist group famous for its severe racism against anyone whose origins are from any country other than America. Members of this group heard about the proud sign that Oscar had hung. Since Oscar was of African descent, they decided to gather one night in August 1938, attack his house, and kidnap him from his wife and children. They took him to the Alton Bridge, and next to the sign he had hung, they tied a rope with one end to the bridge's railing and the other end around Oscar's neck. They then lifted him and threw him from the top of the bridge to hang him. But just moments later, they looked down from the bridge to find the rope empty and Oscar's body gone. This was despite the fact that they had not heard the sound of anything falling into the water. The river below looked completely normal. There was no change in the water's flow, no evidence that anything had fallen into it. In a state of confusion and panic, they all ran under the bridge and turned the area upside down, hoping to find Oscar's body. But Oscar had vanished into thin air. At that point, the group's leader ordered his followers to go to his house and set it on fire with his wife and children inside, as a form of threat, so that if Oscar was hiding somewhere nearby, he would show himself and try to put out the fire. But time passed, and the house with everyone in it turned to ash, and Oscar did not appear. The legend says that after this incident, Oscar's spirit began to frequent the place continuously in the form of a human with a goat's head, wanting to take revenge on all those who were the cause of his and his family's death. Many residents of the area began to report that they saw this at the bridge. However, they all agreed that he does not harm anyone who has no connection to the tragic incident that happened to him. They say that for years after the incident, he haunted the members of the gang who had kidnapped him from his house until he had killed them, one by one. After that, he would only appear among the trees, watching anyone who passed on the bridge. And he would not appear in his full form unless you drove your car to the middle of the bridge, turned on the headlights, and honked 3 times in a row, or if you knocked on the bridge's railing 3 times, just as the gang had done before they threw him off. Many of the people living in the area believe this story, but there is a group who say that while Oscar's spirit is indeed present in the place and appears from time to time, Oscar is the good spirit on the bridge. They believe there is another evil spirit that frequents the place. The spirit that terrorizes, hits, scratches, and bites is the spirit of the leader, Steve. Steve was the head of the KKK group that had attacked Oscar and was known among the people as an aggressive and violent man who practiced many satanic rituals related to magic. The story says that Steve married 3 women, all of whom lived a tragic life of injustice and oppression with him. When he wanted to marry for the 4th time, he chose a woman, but she refused him. Out of his arrogance, he decided to marry her by force. On their wedding day, she drank poison and killed herself. When he found out, he went mad and began to beat her corpse, to the point that the death report stated the cause of death was the bite Steve had inflicted on her, not the poison. After the incident, Steve went to the bridge, and there, Oscar's spirit appeared to him and finished him off. Since then, his soul has been trapped on the bridge, unable to be freed. He is the one who attacks the people who pass by the bridge. And the legend says that if someone just says his name while standing there, his spirit is immediately summoned and tries to harm them. Although the legend of Oscar and Steve is the most famous story about the Alton Bridge, some people connect the strange events that happen on the bridge to a completely different legend that dates back to the 1860s, which is actually before the bridge itself was built. This story tells of a man named Jack Kendall. Jack was also a shepherd of African descent and was very successful in his trade. This often put him in conflict with the local cowboys, which ended with them attacking him one day. They took him to a place in the forest near the site of the Alton Bridge, hung him on a tree, and lynched him there in such a brutal way that his head was severed from his body. But what happened was that Jack was one of the people who practiced voodoo magic, and for that reason, he did not die even after his head was severed from his body. The legend tells that his body continued to move in the forest without a head and tried to attack his killers, but they managed to escape from him. After this incident, he caught a goat, slaughtered it, removed its head, and placed it where his missing head was. Since then, he is the one who appears in that place with the body of a human and the head of a goat, hoping to find those who did this to him and take his revenge. The stories surrounding the Alton Bridge are many, and all of them are related to people who died and whose souls remained attached to the place for many long years. Among them is also the spirit of a woman who appears in the middle of the day in a long dress, calling out for her daughter, who is said to have fallen from her into the river from the bridge. When she jumped in after her to save her, she also drowned. Since then, she began to appear in the place in the same appearance she had before she died, and she keeps calling and calling, but when no one answers, she screams and then disappears. But the truth is, if we go back to the records, we won't find any incidents that happened in this place of a woman who drowned with her daughter, nor will we find anyone who lived there named Oscar or Jack Kendall, or even any evidence of the existence of the person named Steve who is in the story. The whole thing is legends and tales from folklore passed down through generations, generation after generation, until many people believed them. Because of the reputation the bridge has acquired and the many stories told about it, it has become a fertile ground for anyone who is a fan of magic, satanic rituals, and devil worship. They always go there and hold summoning sessions and offer sacrifices and perform many satanic practices, to the point that pet stores in the Denton and Copper Canyon area have completely stopped selling cats because there were people buying them to go torture and sacrifice them at the bridge. And according to the testimony of everyone who has visited the bridge is indeed filled with strange satanic symbols and the remains of the bones of cats and squirrels that were clearly sacrificed in satanic rituals. The repeated visits of devil worshippers to the place have increased the likelihood that the place is actually haunted, but by jinn and demons due to the rituals that are practiced there, not the story of the souls of dead people as told in the legends. Especially since many people have indeed confirmed that strange things happen to them on this bridge. It's not just some tales from legends. For example, in the early 2000s, 2 young boys went to play with a ball on the bridge in the afternoon. They didn't know that they weren't supposed to play in this place. It was an empty bridge, far from people, with water and trees and a pleasant atmosphere, nothing to inspire fear. They became so absorbed in their game that time got away from them until the sun set. When they felt that it was getting late and the place would be dark, they decided to go home. But before they left, they heard the sound of hooves hitting the wooden floor of the bridge, as if an animal was approaching them, even though there was nothing visible in front of them at all. At that moment, the children got scared and started running to get out of the place quickly. The boy who was in front, while running, looked back to check on his friend and saw him being lifted and thrown over the bridge's railing into the river. Although the sight was terrifying and anyone in his place would have run for his life, the boy ran as fast as he could, went under the bridge, and jumped into the river to save his friend. But the strange thing was that when he asked him what made him jump from the bridge like that, the surprise was that he said, "I didn't jump at all. Something lifted me off the ground and threw me from up there." The incident with the 2 boys was not the only recent incident that occurred on the Alton Bridge. Many people have confirmed that when they go there, they hear the sound of screaming and see glowing eyes from between the trees. And always, while they are passing, they feel that someone is walking behind them, to the point that they can feel their body heat on their backs. But as soon as they turn around, they don't find anyone. That's it. This led two adventurers and paranormal investigators to decide in 2018 to take their equipment and go to the bridge at 12 midnight to see for themselves if the bridge is actually haunted or not. They filmed everything that happened there from the moment they entered until they left. Because this event was filmed with sound and video and its views exceeded 20 million, the bridge became much more famous than before. This encouraged many adventurers after that to go and explore this place for themselves. The mystery surrounding the Alton Bridge not only attracted content creators from around the world, but also inspired many writers and authors to talk about the same bridge. One of the most famous of them was the author Becky Vickers, author of the book The Secrets of Goatman's Bridge, which took her 25 full years to write, searching through the stories and strange events that happened there. Over the years, she would go herself to explore the forest there. She herself was exposed to strange phenomena more than once. Sometimes she would be hit or scratched on her back, she and the assistants who were with her, without them seeing or identifying what had done this to them. In addition, she said that every few steps she took in the forest, she would find the bones of dead animals, mostly cats, and other bones tied together in the shape of a pentagram, in clear and explicit evidence of the practices of magic and sorcery that were being carried out in that place with the bodies of animals. Furthermore, she found a complete altar there near 3 trees in the middle of the forest, which is said to have been made by sorcerers to communicate with jinn and demons. She also insisted that she saw more than once the phantoms of people dressed in black, with their heads covered, holding books in their hands, and they looked just like the sorcerers of the 19th century. But they would suddenly disappear into nothingness, just as they would suddenly appear from nothingness. Despite the long years that Becky devoted to writing her research, to this day, neither she nor anyone else has been able to know the true secret of Goatman's Bridge. Is it really haunted by jinn and demons, or is it all just fantasies resulting from people's influence by popular legends? Especially when we know that the Knights Templar worshipped a demon named Baphomet, whose body is that of a human and whose head is that of a goat. And with that, we reach the end of the story. I'm waiting for your opinions, and if you have a story you want us to tell, write it in the comments. The idea that gets the most interaction I will work on, God willing. Show me your support now with a subscription, a like, a comment, and all that good stuff. Share the video with anyone you think will like it. I'll see you next time with a story even more thrilling than the last. Peace.